Kevin was a curious and adventurous young man. He had always been fascinated by history, and one of his favorite places to explore was the old cemetery on the outskirts of town. The cemetery was known for its eerie atmosphere and the stories that surrounded it. Many locals believed it to be haunted, but Kevin dismissed such claims as mere superstition. One gloomy afternoon, Kevin decided to pay another visit to the cemetery. As he entered through the rusted iron gates, a shiver ran down his spine. The air was heavy, and the silence was deafening. The wind whispered through the ancient tombstones, adding to the eerie ambience. Kevin strolled along the narrow paths, reading the names and dates etched onto the weathered gravestones. He was particularly drawn to an old, dilapidated mausoleum at the far end of the cemetery. The entrance was partially hidden by overgrown vines, but Kevin's curiosity got the better of him. Carefully, he pushed aside the vines and entered the mausoleum. Inside, the air felt colder and a faint smell of decay lingered. Kevin's footsteps echoed in the empty space as he explored the dimly lit chamber. Suddenly, he stumbled upon an open crypt, revealing a staircase leading down into darkness. Intrigued and slightly unnerved, Kevin descended the stairs, using his phone's flashlight to guide him. As he reached the bottom, he found himself in a small underground chamber. The walls were lined with shelves, each holding an assortment of dusty coffins. Kevin's heart raced as he realized he had stumbled upon an ancient burial chamber. He examined the coffins, their once ornate designs now faded and worn. However, one coffin stood out from the rest. It appeared relatively new, its wood still polished and untouched by time. The nameplate read Evelyn Blackwood. Kevin couldn't help but wonder who this person was and why she was buried in such a hidden place. As he reached out to touch the coffin, a cold gust of wind swept through the chamber, extinguishing Kevin's flashlight. Panic set in as he found himself enveloped in complete darkness. He fumbled for his phone, but it too had lost all power. Kevin was trapped underground, surrounded by the silent dead. Feeling his way along the chamber walls, Kevin searched for another exit. His heart pounded in his chest as he stumbled upon a hidden door. With a newfound sense of hope, he pushed against it, and it creaked open, revealing the secret passage. Kevin cautiously entered the passage, his hands brushing against cobwebs. As he made his way through the narrow tunnel, he heard a faint whisper, barely audible above the sound of his racing heartbeat. The voice seemed to echo through the stone walls, calling his name. Terrified, yet determined to find an escape, Kevin pressed on. The passage eventually led him to an old, forgotten underground crypt, dimly lit by a single flickering candle. Standing in the center of the room was a figure dressed in tattered robes, their face hidden beneath a hood. Kevin. The figure spoke, their voice echoing through the crypt. You have awakened something that should have remained undisturbed. Before Kevin could respond, the figure vanished, leaving him alone in the crypt. Trembling with fear, he noticed a worn journal lying on a nearby table. It appeared to be the diary of Evelyn Blackwood, the name on the coffin he had encountered earlier. Kevin opened the journal, his eyes scanning the pages, revealing a dark and twisted history. The diary spoke of a curse that had befallen the cemetery, a curse that bound the spirits of the restless dead to the grounds. The curse could only be broken if someone willingly sacrificed their own life within the underground chambers. Suddenly, the ground shook violently, and the walls of the crypt began to crumble. Kevin knew he had to escape before he became trapped forever. With the diary in hand, he raced through the secret passage, back into the burial chamber. As he emerged from the hidden door, he found himself surrounded by the coffins of the deceased. Desperation took over as he pushed and kicked at the coffins, searching for an exit. Finally, he located a loose stone in the wall, revealing a small opening. Squeezing through the narrow gap, Kevin emerged back into the main mausoleum. He stumbled towards the entrance, gasping for air as he broke free from the cemetery's grasp. The moment he crossed the threshold of the iron gates, the ground rumbled one last time, sealing the entrance to the underground chambers forever. Exhausted and shaken, Kevin vowed never to return to the cemetery. Little did he know that the secrets he had uncovered would continue to haunt him, and the restless spirits of the dead would forever be etched in his memories. Kevin spent restless nights haunted by the events that unfolded in the cemetery. The diary of Evelyn Blackwood remained a constant reminder of the curse that lingered within those hidden chambers. Determined to find a way to break the curse, he delved deeper into researching the history of the cemetery and its inhabitants. His investigations led him to a local historian who had dedicated years to studying the area's past. The historian revealed that the cemetery had a dark history dating back centuries. It was believed that a powerful sorcerer had cursed the land, condemning the souls of the deceased to eternal restlessness. Kevin's determination grew stronger as he learned of a rumored artifact that had the power to reverse the curse. The historian mentioned a hidden room in an abandoned church, where the artifact was said to be hidden. It was a risk, but Kevin knew it was his only chance to free himself from the nightmares that plagued him. Late one moonlit night, Kevin ventured into the abandoned church. The crumbling walls and creaking floorboards added to the eerie atmosphere. As he explored the dilapidated building, he stumbled upon a hidden room concealed behind a false wall. Inside the room, he found an ancient chest covered in dust and cobwebs. Kevin carefully opened it, revealing a small, intricately carved amulet. The amulet pulsated with an otherworldly energy, as if it held the key to unraveling the curse. Armed with the amulet, Kevin returned to the cemetery. The night was still and quiet, with only the sound of his footsteps echoing through the gravestones. He made his way to the mausoleum, his heart pounding with anticipation. With trembling hands, Kevin placed the amulet on the lid of Evelyn Blackwood's coffin. The moment it made contact, a blinding light engulfed the chamber, forcing Kevin to shield his eyes. When the light subsided, he found himself standing before a figure dressed in white robes. It was Evelyn Blackwood herself, her once lifeless eyes now filled with gratitude. She explained that she was wrongly accused of practicing witchcraft and was buried in the hidden chambers to ensure her silence. The curse that had befallen the cemetery was a result of the anger and unrest of those unjustly laid to rest. Evelyn thanked Kevin for his bravery and sacrifice in breaking the curse. She assured him that the spirits of the deceased would now find peace and that he would no longer be haunted by their presence. As a token of her gratitude, she bestowed upon him a small locket containing a lock of her hair. With a sense of relief and closure, Kevin bid farewell to the cemetery, vowing to never forget the lessons he had learned. The once haunting atmosphere of the burial grounds now held a tranquil beauty, and the whispers of the past were replaced with a peaceful silence. Years later, Kevin became a renowned historian, dedicating his life to preserving the history of forgotten places. He wore Evelyn's locket as a reminder of the journey he had embarked upon and the darkness he had overcome. The cemetery, once shrouded in mystery and fear, became a place of solace and reflection. Visitors would walk among the tombstones, admiring the stories etched into the weathered stone, unaware of the darkness that once lurked beneath their feet. And as for Kevin, he found solace in knowing that he had played a part in breaking the curse that had held so many restless souls captive. His own nightmares were replaced with dreams of hope and redemption. Dustin, a young and adventurous boy with an insatiable curiosity, found himself wandering near an old cemetery on the outskirts of town. The tall, weathered gravestones seemed to call out to him, inviting him to explore their mysterious pasts. Ignoring the eerie atmosphere that enveloped the place, he ventured deeper into the cemetery. As he strolled among the tombstones, Dustin noticed a small, weathered photograph lying on the ground. Curiosity piqued. He picked it up and examined the faded image. It depicted a family of four, smiling and seemingly happy. Dustin wondered how such a precious keepsake ended up discarded in a cemetery. His inquisitive nature urged him to uncover the story behind the photograph. Days turned into weeks, and Dustin couldn't let go of the mystery. He researched local newspapers and archives, seeking any information that could connect the photograph to the cemetery. Eventually, he stumbled upon an old news article about the disappearance of a young child, Tommy Anderson, nearly 3 decades ago. Tommy had vanished without a trace, leaving his family devastated. The article mentioned that Tommy's family had often visited the cemetery, as it held a special place in their hearts. Their visits were a way to feel closer to their missing son. Dustin's heart sank as he realized the photograph he found might belong to the Andersons, forever separated from their son. Determined to bring closure to the grieving family, Dustin reached out to Mr. and Mrs. Anderson, who still resided in the same town. When he shared the details of his discovery, hope and anguish flickered in their eyes. They agreed to meet Dustin and share their memories of their lost son. During their emotional meeting, Dustin learned that Tommy had loved exploring the cemetery just as he did. It became a cherished place for Tommy, a hidden sanctuary where he could unleash his youthful imagination. However, one fateful afternoon, Tommy had gone missing during a family visit to the cemetery, leaving his parents desperate for answers. Overwhelmed by gratitude, Mr. and Mrs. Anderson allowed Dustin to assist in their search for answers. They revisited the cemetery together, retracing their steps from that tragic day. Dustin's sharp eyes spotted something unusual, an ancient mausoleum partially concealed by thick vines and neglect. Curiosity consumed them as they pushed aside the foliage and approached the decrepit structure. The door creaked open, revealing a dimly lit interior. Inside, they discovered a hidden chamber adorned with cryptic symbols and faded family portraits. The air grew heavy with anticipation as Dustin examined each artifact, piecing together the truth. Suddenly, a faint noise echoed through the chamber, sending chills down their spines. They followed the sound and stumbled upon a hidden passage that led deeper underground. Fear and anticipation mingled in their hearts as they descended into the unknown, their determination unwavering. As they descended further, the passage widened, revealing a hidden chamber that served as a clandestine meeting place long ago. The walls were lined with ancient journals, photographs, and personal belongings, all carefully preserved over the years. The mystery of the cemetery deepened as they delved into the secrets concealed within the chamber. Among the relics and forgotten artifacts, Dustin discovered a journal written by a former groundskeeper named Mr. Johnson, who had worked at the cemetery decades ago. The journal chronicled a series of strange events and hinted at a possible connection to Tommy's disappearance. According to Mr. Johnson's accounts, he had witnessed a suspicious figure lurking around the cemetery on the day Tommy vanished. The figure seemed to be watching the Anderson family from a distance before disappearing into the shadows. Mr. Johnson's journal entries became increasingly frantic as he expressed his suspicions that the figure was somehow connected to the disappearance. Dustin shared this revelation with the Andersons, and together they pored over the remaining pages of the journal. The entries led them to believe that the figure had ties to an old caretaker who had been dismissed from the cemetery under mysterious circumstances. Driven by a desire for justice, Dustin and the Andersons began investigating the identity of the former caretaker. Through extensive research, they discovered that his name was Samuel Blackwood, a troubled man who had vanished shortly after his dismissal from the cemetery. Determined to find answers, they set out to uncover Samuel's fate. Their search led them to the outskirts of town, where an abandoned cottage stood in a state of disrepair. Overgrown with weeds and shrouded in darkness, it had become Samuel's forgotten sanctuary. As they cautiously approached the cottage, they felt a chilling presence surrounding them, intensifying their anticipation. Inside the dilapidated structure, they found remnants of Samuel's life, a collection of old photographs, newspaper clippings, and cryptic writings. The evidence suggested that Samuel had developed an obsession with the Anderson family, particularly with Tommy. The more they uncovered, the clearer it became that Samuel was the figure mentioned in Mr. Johnson's journal. Dustin's heart raced as he realized they were closing in on the truth. Just as they were about to leave, a floorboard creaked beneath their weight, and the sound of footsteps echoed through the cottage. Panic consumed them as they scrambled to find a hiding spot, fearing that Samuel might have returned to his hideout. From their concealed vantage point, they watched as a frail, elderly man shuffled into the room. It was Samuel, a mere shell of his former self. His eyes flickered with recognition as they locked onto the Andersons, but his gaze was empty, devoid of the torment and obsession that once consumed him. In a frail, trembling voice, Samuel spoke of his guilt and remorse. He confessed that he had taken Tommy out of the cemetery that day, believing he could provide the child with a better life. However, his delusion had shattered, and he eventually realized the pain he had inflicted upon the Andersons. With tears streaming down his face, Samuel led the Andersons and Dustin back to the cemetery, where he revealed Tommy's final resting place, hidden beneath an unmarked gravestone. Tommy's remains were laid to rest, unknowingly surrounded by the countless souls whose memories Dustin had sought to unravel. In the days that followed, the truth was brought to light, and the Andersons finally found closure. The town acknowledged Dustin's unwavering determination and bravery in solving the decades-old mystery, honoring him as a local hero. Dustin, forever marked by the experience, continued his pursuit of uncovering untold stories, forever drawn to the enigmatic world that lies within the confines of a cemetery. And so, as the sun set over the quiet town, the cemetery stood as a testament to the power of courage, resilience, and the unyielding quest for truth.